you may not want to hear the gruesome details of growing up as a Hollywood and Broadway brat. My parents were superstars. My father starred in 62 movies and won the box office award. My mother was called the most beautiful woman in America. And I grew up sort of in the ethereal world of that. In fact, my father was on Broadway, starred in Showboat the year I was born, and was starring in all this stuff. And, you know, I was treated like little royalty by Vincent Sardi, and I was written up in the New York Times, et cetera. And then my mother died when I was young, and of course, since I had this privileged feeling about my life, I started, you know, destroying cars. He gave me, you know, the first Volvo P1800, and I ran that off a 120-foot embankment. So I did all of this bad stuff, and I looked for love in all the wrong places, and I actually had love in all the wrong places. So whatever they're doing today is not new to me. I grew up backstage at the Broadhurst Theater. I did some minor parts, but a lot of that stuff. And years after my mother died, a couple of women who come to Christ through Billy Graham, whom your father used to write for, decided my father was really handsome, and one of them wanted to marry him. And she was a friend of Billy Graham's, by the way. So they would take him to Christian events, and he'd drag me to these Christian events. And one of them was Bill Gothard, and I stomped out because, you know, I was profligate and nefarious and doing a lot of drugs, and Bill Gothard was talking against all of that. Later I found that Bill Gothard had his feet of clay, but that doesn't matter. So I walked out and said that Christians are crazy, and then I became one, and I knew they were crazy because I'm talking to you, so look at that. So the women finally said to me, because I'd walked out on so many Christian events, why don't you read the Bible and tell me what's wrong with it? And my son, one of my 3 sons, 4 children, worked for Wycliffe at a while, and they said that 60% of the people in the world come to Christ by reading the Bible. So I started reading Matthew, and God got me. I said, this is, you know, I went to Dartmouth and Cambridge and University of Bordeaux and Toulouse. People think I studied overseas because I liked academics. Actually, I thought I'd meet another girl. So it wasn't really an academic pursuit. But I had a lot of, I graduated summa cum laude, so here I was. And the scripture confronted me, and it changed me. And I got married to Lily a week later after accepting Christ. And I went to an Episcopal cemetery, Anglican cemetery, no, seminary, that's what it was, a seminary in New York. Very good education. They were all crazy, but a very good education. And I loved the head of the seminary, and they were just good people. Well, maybe not so good. They didn't know that Christ exists, but they were teaching about it. And I learned a lot of theology, and they own the rights to C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia. And they'd been trying to produce it since 1954 because C.S. Lewis came over and spoke for the Episcopal Church around the United States. You know, the Episcopal Church and the Anglican Church sort of parade their heroes around as if they're important people. And we got the movie made for CBS, and we won 37 million viewers. And I said, I don't need the Emmy Award we got because I was tired of my father getting awards and being in fame and fortune. So I decided, how can we change the industry? And when I decided that, I heard a story from Ken Wales, and the guy who was a great filmmaker. You know, he just did some of the best films ever done, and Peter Sellers movies that were hilarious. And then from George Heinrich, who ran the Protestant Film Office. So we're doing what the old church film offices, we don't have censorship powers, but we do a detailed economic analysis. We show how movies make more money when they have less sex and violence in them. Fact, because you're from England, there was an article in the BBC saying that they were depressed that Hollywood movies had less sex and nudity in it, not knowing that for many years we've been showing them the more nudity you put, the less money you make. The more sex you put, the less money you make. The more foul language, the less money you make. And for instance, we actually meet with them. I met with one of the head of the Warner Brothers 2 weeks ago, good friend of mine. I met with the head of Legendary Pictures. He put something in the new Legendary Pictures just to, sort of honor our opinion, a good relationship between the father and the son, where the Duke is walking with his son, and you've seen Dune, and the Duke is walking with his son, and he says, you're going to be called to be the Duke, you're being prepared. And he said, I don't want to be the Duke. He said, well, I don't care, I'm your father, I love you anyway, whatever you do. And that just, it's wonderful. So we see a lot of good things going on, but we do the numbers, we talk to the studios, and we do Movieguide, which now reaches, they said last year, because we do the numbers all the time, 43 million people, which sounds big when you're in the Christian world, but actually in the secular world, it's not that big, 43 million people.
So one of my highlights over the years is working the red carpet at your Movieguide Awards Gala.
We love having you there.
It's been so special. What have been, just tell us how that Movieguide Awards Gala works, and what have been maybe some of the highlights over the years?
Well, over the years we've been surprised. I mean, this has gotten more and more like the Oscars. The first one I did, a couple of people told me to do it, Ken Wales and some other friends, and I didn't think anybody'd show up. We did it at the Press Club in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, and suddenly the room was packed. And not only was it was packed with the top people in Hollywood, the head of Disney, the head of Warner. They were all there to hear our report to the entertainment industry. So we started making it more and more elegant. Somebody gave us space at Morton's to do it every year, and then we did it at the Beverly Wilshire, and it became more of an Oscar-type event. And every year I'm surprised that 2 or 3 people, not all of them, but 2 or 3 people who come who are really superstars or very important in the industry. And some of them come all the time, like the head of Legendary Pictures, but nobody would recognize them because nobody knows who the head of the studios are. But they come, and one of the heads of Warner Brothers comes every year. And the head of Disney used to come every year. And the highlight is, I said to him, why are you coming to the Movieguide Awards? He said, well, because the Academy Awards have become so, edgy that we can't win an Academy Award for a Disney movie, so we have to come to the Movieguide Awards, which is wonderful.
Now also your website reviews films. One of my highlights, I got to review The Hobbit at the premiere in London, or at the press conference. How does that work?
Well, we've added more and more content and more articles, but there are other movies opening that have their premiere in London, so we've got to do other movies together. I think we've got to remember to do that. As I've turned everything over to Robbie and Evie and Tess and Jess and everybody else in my office, some of the institutional memory disappears. So you gotta help me. If you see a premiere, you tell me about that. But what we do is we look at movies not to say go or not go. We're not thumbs up or thumbs down. We're trying to help parents by telling them, here's the theology, here's the amount of sex, violence, nudity, here's the worldview, here are the elements that you might want to be concerned about. And children have become our primary readers of Movieguide. And when I did my testimony for Movieguide, which was only 2 minutes, not what I did today, only 2 minutes, and because Robbie forced me to do it, and I didn't want to do it. Suddenly, the next day, we had 1.2 million people who looked at my testimony, and most of them were under 26. And most of them came to the site to receive Jesus. And I didn't expect that because I'm just a balding old age man. And by the end of the week, it was 2 million, and then just kept multiplying. But it's young men that everybody says we can't reach young men in the church. So we're reaching a lot of people that are interested in movies and want to find out that they don't want to be abused by the movie. They don't want to be insulted by the movie. They don't want to have the movie just as a sexploitation, violent, miserable film. So we've got an interesting audience. It's not all Christian. There are a lot of Jews, a lot of other people that come to our Movieguide, and a lot of people who came to the Movieguide Awards, by the way, I should have said, have come to Christ and become very solid Christians.
Just finally, I always like to ask people this: what was the best decision you've ever made in your life?
The best decision is when God dragged me kicking and screaming into the kingdom of God. I love my friend Norman Stone's movie, The Reluctant Convert. Now, he was a great man, but a lot of that, the loss of his mother, the anger of his father, all of those things relate to what happened in my life. And it just...
This is C.S. Lewis.
The C.S. Lewis's life, yeah. Which is a much better story. So I don't want to claim any, but it's true. I mean, coming to Christ, I was not only reluctant, I was anti. I mean, I was living the high life. El Morocco's every night, playing backgammon, drinking, drugs. A lot of people got hurt. The guy who was the son of MGM, the owner, blew his brains out. So that was the best decision. It saved me probably from doing the same thing in a couple of years, from going down the deep end.